Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back everyone to another MX Bikes track building tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to correctly set up reflections for your objects such as water and windows. As we know, the game doesn't support real-time reflections, so you need to set up your cube maps and your reflection maps in order to get your reflections to show in game. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial and let's get to it. Right, so the first step is to get our object out of Blender. If you're looking at this tutorial, I'm assuming you already know how to do that and you're just looking how to get the reflections to make your object look even better. So again, we are working with this water plane here that I have. Has a texture, this water.tga, a little bit of dirty brown, and I also have my normal map set up to get these waves into it. So let's go on to the next step. Next step is to create the shader file. Okay, so our next step is creating the shader file. At this point in time, you're probably already familiar with that, creating it for your normal map and your spec map. We just need to get it to add the reflections. You can do this adding just opening a Notepad, and creating the values you need. So we're really interested in the reflection area of this shader file. Now remember, all those nodes that you set up in Blender, besides a couple specific ones, mainly just your texture, MX Bikes cares nothing about all the nodes that you set up. It only has very limited support for any shaders, and they're all right here: normal map, spec map, and the reflection map. And it's all controlled through this shader file. So again, don't worry about setting up all these crazy nodes on your object in Blender because it's not going to work. So let's see. Again, like I said, you can do this manually, or if you have the latest version of the track builder helper, just go over to the menu, go to the shader editor, or over here on the side menu, SHD editor. This is going to pop up the where you can browse to the location of your texture file for the object that you're working with. So in this case, I had already opened for my water object, and there's a whole tutorial. I'll link it if you look in the upper right-hand corner in this video. You can get a link to that video to see everything about this editor itself. So for this one, I'm going to click on this water TGA because that's our texture for the object. And I already have a shader set up for this since this is from the track I already built. But we're going to play around with this, and you can see it gives us a preview of, it looks almost exactly the same as the text file that I had just shown you in Notepad++. Now, because we're working with water, my suggestion, turn off the normal map when you're first starting to work with your reflections. We just want to be able to see that our reflections are working first. And if you have the normal map with the waves, the reflections actually do get a little ripply based on how ripply your normal map is for this water. So that's a common mistake even I made when I first started doing this. I was like, man, my reflections are not working. I can't see them. Turn off the normal map. I could see them. So it was just how much that normal map was actually influencing the reflections, which was the problem. So again, working with a normal map, turn that off to start with. Just see how your reflections look, then turn it on after you're guaranteed that they're working already. So let's take a look at the various settings that you need to set for your reflection map. This first one is the map. That is the reflection map. Let's take a look at a couple in Photoshop. What we're looking at here on this right-hand side is the reflection map for the water that I'm using. Now your reflection maps, just like your spec map, or any of your texture masks, they need to go in the alpha channel of your map file here, the reflection map.tga. Copy that to your alpha channel, save it as a 32-bit TGA or DDS5. Think of the reflection map, again, it's like a mask. So where the darker it is, the lighter the reflection. The more white it is, the more intense the reflection will be. So if you have 100% white, it's going to be like a mirror. So for our water, you could just mess around, see what good percentages that you think would look good. This left-hand side, this is for the glass reflections. So we can see I have all my window panes here. Those have a certain reflection. They're gray, but they're more on the white side compared to this black, where this will be where no reflections are shown. So we're going to come over to map view, look at this area. So we have reflections in this window pane here. This is looking outside of the warehouse. And this is a reflection of the back of the warehouse that's behind the camera here. These areas where the windows frames are, we don't want any reflection to show. So that is what you see over here in these black areas in between the window panes. All right, our next setting is the environment map. The environment map, that is going to be the images that are used to create the reflections onto your object. Remember, MX Bikes doesn't have real-time reflections on your track objects, so it uses this cube map. What a cube map is think that you're inside a cube, inside your track, and you're going to take screenshots directly in front, behind, left, right, top, and bottom. And that will create a cube that is used to project the reflections onto your object. So let's take a look. How do we create a cube map? There's various ways you can do it. You can find them online. You can use an HDRI file, the same way you use for your sky domes. You can convert those. There's online converters I've used in the past to convert that to a cube map. But a couple betas ago, I want to say beta 16 or an update that came out for it, Pabozo added the ability to take a cube map screenshot directly from map view. So this feature has made it so easy to make a custom cube map based on your track. So you want to do your reflections pretty much at the very end of your build process. You've created your whole track, you have all your objects set, you have your custom sky dome, everything is done because you want to use all of your environment around the track in your custom cube map. So in order to do that, what you're going to do, so build your track, go into map view. And if you're just building a general track where you're not, you're going to use the same reflection map for everything, all the bodies of water on your track. What I would do is just pick a place anywhere, probably in the middle of your track. Just set your camera. You can experiment with the directions. I don't know if it's particular which direction you're pushing, which direction the camera is facing. I believe it is. So you might want to set it up and just experiment. Take a couple of these, build your object, see what the reflections look like. If you need to change the direction to match what your object is showing, just flip the camera around, take another screenshot. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit F9 when you're in map view. It's not going to give you any confirmation or anything, but if you go over to where map view is installed, it is going to create this ENV folder. This creates all of the screenshots that you need, the cube map. We're going to drag these over into Photoshop to take a look at them. And here we go. So this is the top. It's our night sky. To the right was the fence. Left, the front, the bottom, and the rear facing back. So that's what the cube map is. So now just imagine taking these and arranging them, and that's the inside of the cube that you were in. That's what defines it as a cube map. So while we're over in the map view folder, I want to just point out one thing for your mapview.ini file. Just open that up in a text editor, and we're going to see there is this section here. If you don't see this, you can add it. But what this is this gives the resolution of the screenshot that it's going to take. I believe it defaults to something like 256 or 128. I can't remember exactly what it is. But remember, it has to be a power of 2 value. So I just wanted a little bit more resolution on my reflections. So I changed them to 1024. And you could put them at 4K, do whatever. That's probably way too much for a reflection, especially in water with some ripples. You're not going to see a very high quality one anyways. But for my glass, I wanted to see really a good definition on my screenshots. And you can always change the size of them in Photoshop or GIMP to what you need. But just be aware, you can change that. And then that's, again, the resolution of your screenshots. All right, so now for this particular track, I'm using custom cube maps for each one of my objects. So for instance, I have a cube map specific for this window here because I need it to reflect this particular inside of this warehouse here. So what I did is I just planted my camera here right at the window level, and then I hit F9 and I took my screenshot right there. And then that's the environment maps that I used for this particular that window model. And the same thing, I went to the outside. My outside windows, if we look at this, it's kind of hard to see. In the bottom of this window here, you can see the banners outside. They're right there. So what I did is I parked the camera here, looking out this way. F9, I made a screenshot, the cube map, and I used that. All right, so we have also some custom cube maps on this one. So we look in this, there's a reflection, those white beams you see, they're actually those white beams over there. So I did the same thing. I parked it in front of this plexiglass here, and I did my screenshot there. Same thing for my water. I came over here and I just parked it in the middle somewhere where I thought was good, and I hit F9 and I did my screenshot to make my cube map. And let's go see what that one looks like. We'll come over here. Let's look what that cube map looks like. Go into Photoshop. Yeah, and here we go. So the top there, the right, left, that was the front, the bottom, and the back. So again, I made this cube map specific to this object. I wanted the things that were around it to be reflecting in it. If I just use a generic one from the whole map, it's gonna, it's just gonna mainly have the sky and other things. But like, let's say you were on an outside, you had some willows or trees right around your water. You'd want to take your cube map screenshot. Probably I would just park it in the middle of my water or close to the features that you wanted, like that trees or the willows, to get a good reflection, to make it look more realistic with the environment that's around that body of water. So once you have your cube map generated, you hit F9. It's going to drop it into your map view folder. Go ahead and just copy that whole folder, and you're going to paste that wherever your texture files are for this object you're working at. So it already sets them up as ENV folder, and then each one inside is, ENV underscore back, bottom, front, left, right, and top. The easiest way is just to leave it like that. You can just drop that folder in and use it, especially if you're just using one. Now, I'm going to show you, I've got quite a few different things. I have these, 5 different objects with their own reflection maps. So just to make it easy on myself, I just broke each one of these out. I put all their textures within folders for each object. So again, water has only the reflection map, normal map that I needed for this particular object, and it made it easy. Just drop in that environment folder right into it, and then our shader file again will reference that folder that is right next to our reflection map and our texture map for this object. All right, so now that we have our cube map set up, that's what's actually going to be used for our reflections. There's a couple other settings here. So we have our factor min and our factor max. So if you look at the documentation on Pabozo's wiki website, you're going to see that the factor min, that controls the amount of reflection that is shown when you're perpendicular to the water, so, or to the object. So if I'm looking with the camera directly down, straight down at this water, I'm going to see 80% reflection of what I had set in my reflection map. So if it was 100%, it was a mirror looking directly down at it, I would now see 80%. At least this is the best of my ability to understand this. So if you put this way down, 0.0 or 0.01, that's almost zero. If you're directly above the water, you're not going to see any reflection. Let's change that back. I think it was 0.8. Now, as you are, that camera angle gets lower, like so more, let me see, more parallel to that object. So let's say flat to our water, more natural looking. Like if you were looking, you were standing next to this lake or this water here, and you're looking at it. This factor max then comes into play. That's how much of the reflection you can see when you're more at that extreme angle to the or parallel to the water or to your object. The factor EXP, that's I believe exponential. So this is 1.2. That's the default setting that Pabozo had in I believe the documentation. I just used it, or it was might have been in the example track potentially. I forget where I found that. But anyways, that's more of like the fall off or the change in that between the factor min and max as the camera moves. So I believe if you had 1.0, that'd be a perfectly linear, kind of curve. It's not a curve, it's linear, but the line of the difference between min and max of how the viewing angle shows your reflections. So 1.2 probably exponentially sets it to be a little bit more curved. I have not messed around that with a lot, but I would assume that's either going to have the fall off's going to be greater at the end as your angle gets more parallel to it, or it could be the reverse. I'm not sure. So just play around with those though. If you're not seeing your reflections, check this factor min and that factor max and check that out. So a Fresnel reflection. So Fresnel reflection, you turn that off, you'll see it removes that. You add that there. If you look in the documentation, it's going to say that that's more for water. So Fresnel, it kind of, I don't want to say dilutes it, but it makes it more of a softer reflection. It's like if you're looking through the water, you're not going to see a perfect mirror reflection in water most times. It's going to have a little bit of, I want to just call it texture or a little bit of noise to it. If you're making something like chrome or maybe probably even a window or a mirror, say that, you want to turn this off and it's going to give you more of a metallic, it's a metallic reflection. So for this one, we're going to leave that on and give it, because we're doing water. All right, so, and remember, every time you make a change to this, go ahead and save the SHD file. And when you save it, you make changes, you're going to have to convert your FBX back to EDF after every shader change. So go ahead and do that. Convert your model again. And once that is done, you're going to want to go ahead and build your track again. You could just build the map file when you're testing the reflection maps. So you don't have to build everything. You can build all if you want. But we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So go ahead and click build map file. And once your build has finished, you want to go back to your to map view. If it's open, go ahead and open the map again to reload it. All right, and once it has reloaded, go ahead and navigate back to your object that you added the reflections to, and we get over here and all right, we have a problem. My water is not showing up anymore. Now, I believe, remember, I think I mentioned this earlier, I believe this is because we only have our reflection set in the shader. I believe that at a minimum, the spec map or the normal map is required when doing this. It could just be a bug, but let's try that. So again, because we're working on water, I want to make sure we see our reflections. I do not want to enable my normal map. So I'm just going to enable the spec map. We can't use the normal map, so we are going to turn that off, and we are going to select our normal because that's where our spec map is in the alpha channel of it. And let's just try that. We're going to go ahead and save that, rebuild our object, and then rebuild our track with the spec map now set. Okay, so we have built the track again. This time I turned off a lot of my objects to make the render a little faster, and here we go. Our reflections are there. So we can see it's a pretty much a mirror. Even though I have it really low, it's kind of a dark gray on that reflection map. It still shows quite a bit, but you can still see the texture. This water is a little bit translucent, so you can see the gravel texture underneath it. So this just demonstrates that the reflections are in the correct place. If you remember, I have that banner on the wall there. There's the red fire door, and then we come over this way. There's the offices and that plexiglass wall that's shown there. And then this side has the actual railing. And this side I don't know if it'll reflect good enough. I can't quite see it. Oh, there's the logs. So the logs that are usually there with that tire jump. So it's all oriented the correct way. So now let's go back and add the normal map back to our render, since we know the reflections are working. It's the correct, it's the translucent as much as we want it. It's reflecting like we want. So let's give that a try. Right, so we're back over to the shader editor. We are now going to enable our normal map. Let's reselect it, the water normal, and we're going to switch our spec map back to using the normal map. So we're back to now our original shader. All right, we're going to go ahead and save that shader. Remember, after every save, we need to go ahead and reconvert the FBX to EDF, and then rebuild our map file. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then let's check back in once that's done. All right, so that build is complete. Let's get back over and check it out. And there we are. We have our normal map. And see, the reflection, really, when that normal map gets attached to that, it really distorts the reflection. So you really have to look. But if we get really close to the water, and we can see that, yep, it still has our reflections. But again, it's very much affected by the normal map. So if we came up here, you might look at this and you'd be like, hey, my reflections do not work. Just be sure to check your angles. And again, most important, test it first without the normal map. And that is the complete process for creating your reflection maps for your MX Bikes objects. Let's do a quick recap. So first thing you want to do, create your cube map. Use F9 in map view to create your custom cube maps that are perfect for your track. You then want to create your shader file, the .shd. You're going to do that either through Notepad, the old school way, or in the Resolute MXB Track Builder Helper application. You want to then convert your object to EDF. Be sure to save your shader file every time. You then need to build your map. Go back to the map view, test it out. If you're not seeing your reflections, always remember disable the normal map. Try it without that. The normal map really affects those reflections, and it also depends on the angle that you're viewing your reflections from your object. All right, guys, again, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video. Leave me some comments. Let me know how you liked it. Give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one.